From the Mumbai studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on the debate.
Good evening and welcome viewers, and there's something I want to talk to you about tonight. And I will talk to you about this in detail in weeks to come, but the lead story tonight is about what is not being reported. The one story that the entire, and I mean the entire Lutyens media, the entire so-called mainstream media, has collectively come together and decided not to report today. There must be a reason. There's one big news development that they have decided, all of them, to collectively black out somehow, and they feel that they are powerful enough that if they all come together and decide not to broadcast or publish this news, that you will not know about it. And do you know what that news is, viewers, tonight? That news is about Sachin Vaze. Sachin Vaze, the patron saint and the single greatest source for this anti-republic media, has today been charged with murder and terrorism, along with 9 others. And in any other country, the once head of a crime unit of the country's financial capital, carrying out murders, terrorism, extortion, and the most unimaginable lowest level crimes, along with elaborate fabrication of evidence and blackmail, in any other country, viewers, this would have been the number one headline. It would have been a number one headline. And in India also it would have been, because you know, viewers, what are the accusations that have been leveled against him, and what has been found? Well, it's been found that this man planned and conspired to carry out a murder sitting in the Mumbai police headquarters. And this entire media comes together and says, can we somehow put a lid on this? Because if we start reporting that the person who we used for the longest time to fight the Republic Media Network is himself this kind of a person, then Republic will benefit. Their problem, viewers, is that if the truth comes out, Republic will benefit. Do you know why, viewers, this is all being covered up by the pseudo media? It is. And I will say this with all the conviction at my command. All of this is being covered up because Sachin Vaze was the partner in crime of this fake and pseudo media when they worked together with him to put a mountain of lies against your network, the Republic Media Network. You know everything, viewers. You know there were certain TV anchors who are frustrated because night after night nobody watches them. These people were quoting Sachin Vaze ad nauseum. Anything he leaked out was gospel for them. The crumbling empires of these media organizations, for them it didn't matter whether it was Sachin Vaze or Pakistan. As long as they thought that a partnership with Sachin Vaze could try and help them fix Republic, it was worth a try. They were all working together, viewers. All of them working together. All of them are blacking out this news tonight. Each one of them. They don't have the courage to face us one-to-one anymore. All that they want to do is conceal the news about Sachin Vaze. Stop reporting the truth about Parambir Singh. Stop reporting the truth about the fabrication, extortion, murders that this group was allegedly carrying out. Ask them tonight, viewers. Ask those frustrated TV anchors. Some of whom think that they walked into my shoes. I've told them I carried my shoes with them. They won't fit into my shoes. Why don't they quote Sachin Vaze now? Ask them, viewers, tonight. Confront them. Ask them tonight. Why don't you quote Sachin Vaze now? Ask them wherever you can. Why don't you swear by Parambir now? Why don't you swear by Sachin Vaze and Parambir and all the other people and the members of this team, all of whom are facing these kind of similar charges? Why don't they speak about Parambir now, who is on the run and who faces charges that are equally grave? Because they worked together with them to try and take on the Republic Media Network. And they have failed. And how, viewers? You have come closer to us in the last 1 year. And tonight I ask you, why don't you ask these media opportunists whether they owe us an apology? And in fact, not us, viewers. Why don't you ask them whether they owe you an apology? They think that by blacking out this entire news about Vaze and Parambir, they will slip away. And I request you tonight, viewers, it's my personal request to you tonight. One-on-one, I am requesting you tonight, remind these media opportunists on our behalf tonight that they cannot slip away anymore. And you know who exactly I am talking about. Remind them, viewers. You know, viewers, who I am talking about. The partners of Sachin Vaze in the media, Sachin Vaze charged with murder. Should the media opportunists get away? Debate number 1 tonight, viewers. The Taliban claims the UAE is going to accord its recognition, but the spectre of emboldened terror is already playing out in New Zealand. How can there be any legitimacy for the Taliban? And here are the headlines. This Friday evening, the 3rd of September, on the debate tonight. Amidst heavy firing with the Northern Alliance, Taliban delays announcement on government formation. Women demanding equal rights in government formation attacked by the Taliban on the streets of Kabul. After the Al-Qaeda, Taliban rakes up Kashmir. Can the Indian government engage with them anymore? What a massive embarrassment for Pakistan. UK refuses to wade into Pakistan's attempt to raise Gilani. NIA files 10,000 page charge sheet in the Antilia case. The Latvians media favorite Sachin Vaze and Pradeep Sharma charged for murder and terrorism. Disgraced Sachin Vaze, Pradeep Sharma, their role is nailed. Will their bosses be next? And ladies and gentlemen, can a terrorist group that captured the land with the rule of the gun be legitimized by the free world? Absolutely not. Pakistan is lobbying hard. That's one more reason not to. China too is rushing in to legitimize the Taliban in Afghanistan. But we must take a tough stand. We cannot allow legitimacy to a group that threatens to disrupt peace, not just in Kashmir, but around the world. Let's debate.
In the rough terrain of Panjshir, Northern Alliance is bludgeoning every Taliban attempt to illegally capture their homeland. The resistance fighters have inflicted heavy casualties on Taliban.
As you know better that there is fighting between Taliban and Panjshir resistance forces in Panjshir. They had negotiation, but then negotiation was failed, and now it's said that Taliban might taking their injured fighters there.
On the streets of the Afghanistan capital, women are protesting against Taliban, demanding inclusion in cabinet. A protest that Taliban wants hidden from cameras. The Taliban is trying to project Mullah Baradar as the head of the new government, but the path is not very easy.
Today is the 10th of a week of Taliban government, but still they are unable to announce their leaders. But some reports came out suggesting the Taliban could announce their government and official before September 4.
Some Western powers are still reluctant to recognize a government of terrorists. Despite strong lobbying by Pakistan, UK too has drawn the line. Despite the monumental mess it left Afghanistan in, US is still batting for Taliban legitimacy. But at a time when Taliban is openly indicating a Kashmir plot, can India engage with the terror group and take them for face value? And at a time when the world is waking up to terror attacks, especially emboldened by the rise of Taliban, can the world recognize Taliban government and legitimize terror? Let's debate.
And great to see everyone tonight. Nalin Kohli, Brahma Chalani, M.R. Venkatesh. Nalin Kohli, our BJP spokesperson, Brahma Chalani. I think, how do I introduce him? I think is one of India's best regarded strategic studies experts. And M.R. Venkatesh, he's a master polemicist, political analyst and lawyer. Ambassador Alan Pincus, former Consul General of Israel to the US. Ambassador Gerald Feinstein, Senior Vice President of the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Sultan Baraka, Director of the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies at the Doha Institute. And Charles Kupchan, back on the debate, Senior Fellow at the Council of Foreign Relations. And we've had some feisty debates, haven't we, Mr. Kupchan, in the last couple of weeks? Glad you still have a smile on the face when you come back. It seems you're enjoying the debates, and it's great to see you tonight. So let me start with you, Mr. Kupchan. You know, there is a sudden surge in this narrative, and America is getting more and more desperate in saying, Brahma, that, we have to recognize the Taliban, we have to legitimize the Taliban, we have to give them a seat on the table, we need to create the momentum for others to do so, and you're doing this when today an ISIS-inspired terrorist emboldened by the Taliban takeover stabbed 6 people in a supermarket in Auckland. And you're still saying they will have to earn a place on the high table. So you've given them a place on the high table. And you're encouraging others to believing that the more killings, massacres, brutalities they carry out, they too will be given on a seat on the high table by you. Charles Kupchan, please, open the debate, sir.
You're right. I am a glutton for punishment, and that's why I've come back to join your show. Let me make 3 quick points. First of all, this is a debate that's in play. No decisions have been made by most countries about whether to recognize the Taliban, and those decisions will be made not on what the Taliban says, but on what the Taliban does. So everybody's watching. But that gives the international community leverage. We can say to the Taliban, you need to meet these standards if you want recognition, if you want assistance. Secondly, we have serious worries about human rights, humanitarian welfare, medicine, food. The Taliban want to have legitimacy inside Afghanistan. It's in their interest to try to get international assistance. So that's another interest that we have in working this issue. And finally, do we really want to abandon the region to Pakistan and to China, who are ready to probably recognize the Taliban? No, we want to have a situation where other voices are in the game. And then one final point, should we break off relations with China because of what they do to Uyghurs or Hong Kong? India, should it break off relations with Russia because Russia poisons Navalny and throws him in jail? We always need to balance our moral considerations with pragmatism.
I am both stunned, amazed at your optimism about the Taliban. And you just said, should we abandon it? I think Brahma Chalani would correct you to say all that you were doing over the last 10 days was making a case for abandoning. And now you're saying, should we abandon? No, sir, you're abandoning ethics. You're abandoning any form of democratic ideology. And you're refusing to see it. You're telling the whole world, come and recognize the Taliban. Are you ready for terrorists to use Afghanistan as a base and infiltrate across nations? Have you seen the letter written by 130 retired generals and admirals in your country, which has said that terrorists around the world are feeling emboldened and able to pass freely into our country through our open border with Mexico? Will the US admit it has opened terrorist corridors to cutting deals with the Taliban? I don't know what you're saying, sir. But I think you should look at the consequences.
The United States is not saying, let's recognize the Taliban. The United States is saying, let's sit down and as a group of democratic countries discuss the standards to which we will hold the Taliban. So I think you're
why should we be led by you?
The state of the debate as it exists today.
Why should
I would ask you to be more accurate in your description.
Okay, I'll get Brahma Chelani to respond. I'm clearly in the view this is dangerous territory, sir. Let's not go there. Brahma Chelani.
Let's be clear as to what has happened. President Biden has helped deliver a huge victory to the international jihadist movement by facilitating the establishment of a terrorist superstate in Afghanistan. We have a terrorist superstate on India's frontiers virtually. This is the greatest victory of terrorists in the modern history of global jihadism. The terrorist capture of Afghanistan occurred within months of Biden assuming office. This suggests that this is unlikely to be the last blunder of the Biden presidency. And look at the paradox. The Biden administration imposes sanctions on Myanmar because the military junta is ruling Myanmar. It does not want to engage with Myanmar. It advises India to isolate Myanmar. Yet, the same administration wishes to engage with the terrorist regime in Kabul. Can there be a more jarring paradox than that?
No.
Both Myanmar and Afghanistan are India's neighbors, but the US has a diametrically opposite policy in relation to both Myanmar and Afghanistan. Murder and mayhem is how the Taliban have come to power, and brute might is how they will impose their will on Afghans, with the gun being the symbol of this terrorist regime. Brutal terrorists don't change. The idea that the Taliban has changed or can change is a lie designed to push through Pakistan's agenda so that they can rule Afghanistan by proxy. Discussing a more moderate Taliban gives credibility to a myth, and sending the CIA chief to Kabul to strike some kind of a deal with the Taliban was a terrible idea.
Now, and also, are you ready for the domino effect? Ambassador Alan Pincus, let's move fast. It's not just regional terrorist groups in South Asia, not just the Lashkar-e-Toiba, not just the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which have been emboldened, but the Hamas and the Al-Qaeda linked group in Syria, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. They've been rejoicing at the Taliban victory. And therefore, I think that, fighting to give legitimacy to the Taliban could go into very difficult and dangerous terrain.
Yeah, but the idea that there's Islamic radicalism in Afghanistan and Islamic radicalism in Gaza and Islamic radicalism in Lebanon and elsewhere, in Pakistan for that matter, and it's the same strain of Islamic radicalism that threatens everyone and they're building an empire, I think is somewhat exaggerated on that. Look, no one is happy about what the Taliban has been doing. No one is happy with the idea that the Taliban will be in control. But you have to measure them by what they do, not by what we think they are. No one has any illusions, and no one has any flowery thoughts about the Taliban. They're not liberal Democrats. They're not Scandinavian human rights activists, and they're not going to run a modern country. In fact, Afghanistan, maybe Arnab, our fundamental mistake in this debate, but going back 20 years, is looking at Afghanistan as a nation state, as a crumbling nation state. It is not a nation, it is not a state. It's a collection of ethnic groups divided into tribes, divided into clans, which are then divided into families, which are then divided into regional allegiances. And to assume that they pose the same threat as does Al-Qaeda, as does ISIS, as does Hezbollah, which are Shiites, of course, but nonetheless a part of the Islamic radicalism movement, I think that's a stretch.
Why do you say so? Ambassador Pincus, I'd get Nalin Kohli also on this, and that's where I think there's a fundamental disagreement. I also think, Ambassador Pincus, I come from a worldview where here's an opportunity to show a terrorist group that is trying to present itself as a state, which you rightly said it is not. It's a right opportunity to show them their place. We keep saying, oh, they're going to find it very expensive to run the country. They won't be able to pay salaries. They'll have billions of dollars of debt. There'll be chaos. But let the chaos happen. Let the funding stop. Let us run them to the ground.
Well, you're right, Arnab, but look at history as a guiding light here. The British tried and failed twice in the 19th century and once in the 20th, in 1990. The Soviet Union failed in 1979, and the US had all these grand illusions of building a nation state and installing democracy, and that failed too. It was bound to fail. It was an unwinnable war with no interests to be found. We don't need to make a model of them. We being the West, we being the US. I'm not an American. I don't speak on behalf of the United States, but there's nothing for anyone there to do. I mean, everyone said the Chinese and the Russians are going to take advantage of a vacuum that the Americans are supposedly leaving. There is no vacuum, and I wish the Chinese and the Russians all the best in the world if they try and go in there to fill that vacuum. They got accustomed to America hemorrhaging for them, and that's no longer going to be the case. Now, as for the Taliban itself, we're not in disagreement, Arnab. I think they should be shown for who and what they are.
No, fundamentally,
and I'm not an expert
on fundamentals, you and I are not in disagreement, but only point is about the domino effect. I want to bring in Nalin Kohli here. So he's a spokesperson for India's ruling party, the BJP, so you can get that perspective as well. This August alone, Nalin, Indonesian police arrested 58 members of the Al-Qaeda-linked group. It is called the Jamaah Islamiyah. They were planning an attack on Indonesian Independence Day on 17th August. This is the same time that the Taliban was taken over. I don't look at the world in compartments, Nalin. I believe that if the Taliban becomes a fountainhead or a global epicenter, then groups like the Jamaah Islamiyah will be encouraged, and we will have to look at the very quick, proliferation of this kind of, what you call it, radical thought or terrorism or whatever.
Arnab, I recall many decades ago having a conversation with then Foreign Minister of Israel, Mr. Shimon Peres, who went on to become Deputy Prime Minister, on the subject of terrorism. And he was specific that we need to recognize that it's a global threat because it sees no boundaries. And that's a view held by many people across the world, and today it's a harsh reality. The global terrorism network is entrenched, not just in the manner of arms and ammunition, but whether it's the drug trade, whether it is finances, it's a huge network, and it really does know no boundaries. I think 9/11 proved it conclusively after what happened in New York and in the Pentagon, that terrorists can attack even what is considered a land which was impregnable in terms of terrorist attacks, which was the United States. And that's why you had 20 years of Afghanistan, which is from October, first week of October, when Bin Laden was not surrendered in that sense, and the United States launched its military attack. And it's 20 years hence. So therefore, after 20 years and where we stand today, are we safer? That's a question that has to be answered. And one wonders, how are we safer? You've had one attempt at a terrorist state in recent times, and an organized one being ISIS in the Middle East area. You've got now Taliban here, so a question arises, will they change and live up to the aspirations and the expectations of what some countries are speaking about? You have a UN resolution which India at that time in the chair has put in, a large part of the world has supported, barring China and Russia, which abstained for their own reasons, but specifically laying on the doorsteps of the Taliban, whether it's their erudite English-speaking spokesperson in the Doha office, or what we see on television coming out of Kabul and other parts, that there is a set of expectations from what is called the civilized world in terms of what they expect would be the basics of any state, which is rule of law, human rights, protection of minorities, women's rights, children, all of it. And of course, not harboring terrorists and launching terrorism against others. those who may not be of your same religion, and also those who may not see eye to eye with you. So therefore, these are very, very large questions. There are no easy answers. I think the verdict is still to be out there. The most blunt on it, and Brahma possibly would be on that, I've been following his works for decades, would probably say that these are, bluntly as it is, there are a set of people from the United States and the Western world who feel that maybe we should give it a chance. But so far, there's not been a good track record of giving a chance to anything that has been
Nalin, this whole atmosphere we are creating of helplessness in our own minds. Oh my God, we are in this situation. Okay, they won't hurt. Let's do a deal with them. Let's just walk away as much as possible. Let's divide the responsibility between 100 nations rather than pressurize ourselves. My question is, and Ambassador Gerald Feinstein, I want you to come in on this. You can sanction terrorists. You can use counter-terror operations against terrorists. You can build a global alliance to wipe out terrorism. But if you end up at the door of the Taliban and give them legitimacy, which America desperately wants to do, which the UAE is planning to do, what leverage will the civilized world have vis-a-vis the Taliban anymore? What lever will they have if they accord them legitimacy?
Well, I think that you're in the odd situation of refusing to take yes for an answer. I think that we've heard on your program already. We've heard from Tony Blinken. We've heard from Dominic Raab. We've heard from the EU. We've heard from many voices, including the voices on this program, Alan Pincus and Charles Kupchan. That in fact, nobody is giving legitimacy to the Taliban. Tony Blinken was very clear in saying that if they want to be considered a legitimate government, they have to earn it. And we will be watching very closely. And they have to earn it through respect for human rights, civil liberties, the role of women in Afghan society. But they also have to earn it by fulfilling their commitments and the obligations that they made to break their relationship with Al-Qaeda, not to support ISIS-K, which we know is an opponent of the Taliban. And so all of these issues are out there. The United States has a great deal of leverage with the Taliban. In fact, we have 15 billion levers to use against the Taliban. The Taliban are desperate. If they want to govern as opposed to simply occupy Afghanistan, they need to reach out to the West. They need to earn legitimacy and respect from the Western countries. Otherwise, they will be starved. So there is a great deal of power and leverage that the international community has to exercise against the Taliban to make sure that all of these things that you're fearful of, which are serious concerns. I don't dispute the idea that the Taliban potentially could be a safe haven again for international terrorism. This is a serious issue, but we also have means to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Okay.
And we also, the last point that I'll make, or two last points. One, Afghanistan of 2021 is not Afghanistan of 1995. And whether the United States succeeded or didn't succeed in changing the nature of the Afghan state, the reality is that there is a huge population of Afghans who are no longer susceptible to the message of the Taliban. That's one. And then the second one is that the international community is far stronger today in its ability to resist and to push back against terrorist threats than it was in 2001 or prior to that. And so while we have concerns about international terror networks, and those are serious concerns, we also have capabilities and possibilities and programs in place to defeat those efforts.
Okay, so quick two quick responses to what you've said there, and I'll actually let M.R. Venkatesh respond to you. Point number one, you said Afghanistan of 2021 is not the Afghanistan of 1995, but the Taliban of 2021 is worse than the Taliban of 1995. Point number one. Point number two, you said we will see as and when terrorist groups and Al-Qaeda, if they start doing business with the Taliban, we'll have to act. Well, I can only inform you today that Sirajuddin Haqqani, the leader of the Haqqani network, which is a USA designated dreaded terrorist organization, is being included in the new government. This announcement has been made today. So, a designated, US designated terrorist is part of the Taliban government. What else remains to be proven? The Al-Qaeda is working with them.
Right.
So,
you're absolutely right.
So then why not have financial sanctions then?
That the Taliban signed with us that they would break with Al-Qaeda. And you're absolutely right that the Haqqani network is part of the AQ network. And so this is an issue.
So then
again,
how serious is this?
This will be a point against the Taliban in terms of any interest that they might have in being seen as a legitimate successor to
Ambassador General, it can't be a point. It has to be the point. It has to be the point to break. It has to be the point to impose financial sanctions. If you don't nip it in the bud, MR, I mean, the point is, how long a rope do you want to give the Taliban? If you don't nip it in the bud, they won't get the message. If the Al-Qaeda has officially been included in the government and this government continues to have financial relationship with the US, with Blinken saying, let's wait a little bit more time, then how can we take Blinken with any sincerity? And that's Haqqani. That's Haqqani and Bagram.
I mean, this is a misjudgment on your part. The Taliban are already sanctioned. We're already freezing $15 billion of Afghan funds here in the United States. And so it's not something that we might have to do or
Ambassador,
it's something that's already done.
Ambassador, you know, I just remind you that there is the Security Council Resolution 1267 called on states sponsored and backed by the America to counter the Taliban, 1989. Today you say Taliban is given a seat on the table. Let's see how they are working. The pictures I show on the screen was of Sirajuddin Haqqani, by the way, at Bagram, and this was carefully planned media PR op. He was sent back to visit the jail, escorted by all the Taliban top leaders. This is the jail where he was. He was sent there, and the message was to America, this is the way we are. We work with the Al-Qaeda, and you better work with us. He says, here I am. I'm the Al-Qaeda. I'm the Haqqani network. America, deal with it. This is a message to America, to Blinken, to Biden. M.R. Venkatesh is on the debate. M.R.
Arnab, to look at Taliban as some sort of organization that is limited only to Afghanistan or will limits its operation only to Afghanistan is a very innocent view of Taliban and Afghanistan. The entire Islamic terror is Hydra-headed, and it is a Hydra-headed monster. And I would say that they also have a theological drive, and probably the whole way it is progressing, I would say an emergence of a caliphate is inevitable.
That's the point.
But it is very, very distressing and depressing to see that the West being, very innocent about this unfolding scenario and trying to look at it as some sort of a small war, and as if Taliban is not a homogeneous organization but a heterogeneous one, and broken by tribes and families and provinces. Yes, they may be internally, but when it comes to West and the Indians, they get united. Let us remember that. And the way the West is looking at this entire problem, it seems to suggest that it is protected by a splendid geography. And we need to see that as a nation, we need to probably take a different stand from the West, and we need to keep our supreme national interest paramount. And if the West comes with us, so be it. If the West doesn't come with us, so be it. We have to fight our battles all by ourselves. And this war that is going to unfold in Afghan will spill over to Pakistan. And once it spillovers to Pakistan, it comes directly to the borders of India. So the point I'm trying to emphasize is probably India has to be more proactive. And we have seen this pussyfooting of the Western scholars and Western think tanks, that they are reluctant to do anything that would probably upset the Taliban. Probably there is a secret deal with the Taliban, Probably there is some sort of a give and take with the Taliban. Probably they want the Taliban to flourish for their own strategic reasons. We wouldn't know about this. I would leave it for scholars to come about. But the way the West is dealing with Taliban gives me no hope, and I am very clear that they are not sincere about what they are talking about.
No,
They are confused and they are scared. They are confused and they are scared.
The situation is changing so dramatically, Sultan Barakat. Today, the Taliban has officially declared that they are working with the Al-Qaeda. So they are not even hesitating. It's not if they are working with the Al-Qaeda, if they are working with the Haqqani network, if they are carrying out these photo ops, if they are making these announcements, and on the same time America, UAE are working hard to try and give them legitimacy, then I really wonder what will be recognized next. Will an ISIS caliphate be recognized next? Will the Al-Qaeda be given a seat in the UN next?
Right. Well, if you allow me some time to explain things rather rationally, and for a minute to put aside our obsession with both Pakistan and Islam, and just think of the 38 million Afghans who are in the country and what the future holds for them. What you just said is not accurate about the Al-Qaeda, as far as I know, and I follow the talks very, very closely, and I led many of the Track 2 initiatives between the Taliban and the Republican teams. Haqqani, who you mentioned in your report, is an official member of the negotiation team and has been sitting around the table with the United States and everybody else for a long, long time. He was released from prison through a deal that was struck in the days of Trump, and he's one of the 12 negotiators on behalf of the movement. So there is no association between Anas Haqqani and Al-Qaeda as far as we're aware, and as far as the United States is aware. And I don't think the United States would have handed over had they not reached a conclusion, very clear conclusion, that the Taliban did honor their commitment to eliminate any potential link to Al-Qaeda. Now, the other point is that what can we do now? No state, as far as I know, said we will recognize the government of Taliban unless it is inclusive. And everybody emphasized the fact that it has to be earned. Legitimacy has to be earned. And what is very interesting at the moment is that the interest of the international community and that of the 38 million people has started to align around issues of human rights, civil rights, women's rights, and so on. So the more advances they make in those areas, the better perceived they will be by the international community. And until those steps are taken, I don't think any nation is willing to recognize the Taliban government. The UAE is in a very different league. I don't know what they're planning and what are they doing. They were the ones who helped the former president to escape from the country, which led to the collapse last minute of what was potentially a very good deal that could have left the country in a much more stable position. And I don't think you should count on what UAE does. No, it was also one of the very few countries that took the Taliban in 1996. So leave them aside for a minute. And I think what we should really focus on is these people. If the state collapses, if there is hunger in Afghanistan in the weeks and months to come, then you have to worry about exporting terrorism, about all these young men who are trapped in the country. What will they do? The West has tried. It's not for lack of trying. The United States has spent trillions of dollars. Thousands of soldiers were killed trying to counter the Taliban the way they thought it was done best. Meanwhile, India did not engage in that area. India had a very different position, working with the Ghani government, which ended up to be seen as very fragile, very corrupt, and so on. So I think you cannot expect the West to do more than what India is willing to do for itself within its region.
India, Mr. Barakat.
If India feels a threat.
Mr. Barakat, may I intervene? I'll let Brahmachalani respond to you. I can assure you India is more than capable of taking care of itself. The way we are looking at this in the debate today is the consequences that we are setting for the world. Now, first, I think you made a factually wrong point in your attempt to counter me. You said you are completely wrong. You were factually incorrect, Mr. Barakat, and I would like to correct you there. You said that Haqqani network, Al-Qaeda and all have no links.
No, I said Anas Haqqani. Anas Haqqani. You used the image of one member of the negotiation team.
I used the image of Anas Haqqani, and I also referred to Sirajuddin Haqqani. And
no, but you can't just, because they're all called Abdullah, you just put them all in one basket.
No, just 1 minute. Mr. Barakat, let me correct you. When I spoke about the links between the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, which are emerging and which have become official now, I made a distinct reference to Sirajuddin Haqqani, right, who is still on your FBI list, 150 pounds, 5 feet 7 inches, right, a reward of 5 million, and maintains close ties to the Al-Qaeda, and hence, because of his ties to the Al-Qaeda, is a specially designated global terrorist. So I was completely correct, sir, and you are wrong. Second, I humbly disagree with your assertion, which seems to be an argument that if there is hunger in Afghanistan, there will be more terrorism, because that seems to be the argument that hunger and alienation cause terrorism, which is a very dangerous argument. And my third point is also, and I want to bring in Brahma Chalani, he knows much more on this subject. See, the fact is that today, let me give an example. What happens in Afghanistan will have consequences in Yemen. If the Houthi rebels, who are forced to withdraw from all areas seized and relinquished arms by the UN in 2019, will they today have a chance at government formation in Yemen? Let's think about it. If we agree with the Taliban's demand for cooperation, then will the US and EU designated terror group Hezbollah, which runs a government in Lebanon, carries out terrorist attacks against Israel, also be extended cooperation? Because it's a global precedent you are setting. In today's world, what happens in Mexico has an immediate impact in Indonesia.
Yeah,
so we can't look at these things in isolation.
You've already tried all the other arsenal. You had a war on terror for 20 years that led us absolutely nowhere. It has alienated the whole Muslim world. It has made things worse, and it's time you try something different.
So
you must engage with the moderate side. You must encourage those.
There is no moderate of the Taliban. So there is no moderate in the Al-Qaeda, but I'll let Brahma Chalani answer that.
Forget about Al-Qaeda.
There can never be a moderate Taliban. There can never be a moderate Al-Qaeda. No, they are not moderate by nature.
That the first embassy they saved in Kabul, when they entered Kabul, was the Indian embassy.
They don't save any embassies, sir. That's what you're thinking. I am telling you is that the Al-Qaeda, Osama's right-hand man, so Osama's right-hand man, Aminul Haq, who helped Osama escape during the 2001 battle in Tora Bora, the Taliban are garlanding him and taking him in the Nangarhar province of Afghanistan. You're the only person who believes the Al-Qaeda is not back. You brought the Al-Qaeda back. Brahma Chalani, please. Sorry, I'm taking too much time. Brahma.
Well, the first point that I wish to make is that poverty has not given birth to jihadists. The jihadists normally come from well-to-do families.
These were 9/11 attackers, the bombers of Paris, or the bombers of Sri Lanka. If you look at their background, they came from wealthy families. In about 8 days, observing the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. That anniversary should be an occasion to reflect on the U.S. by facilitating the terrorist takeover of Afghanistan has made its homeland and its friends less safe. The seeds of another 9/11 may have been sown. And one forgotten lesson of 9/11 is that the U.S. and the rest of the world must not draw specious distinctions between good and bad terrorists. And yet, that's exactly what we are doing today. Biden was quick to blame ISIS-K for the Kabul airport attack. He vowed to hunt down those behind the bombing that killed 13 U.S. troops. And almost on the same day, virtually, his Secretary of State said publicly that the U.S. is ready to work on counterterrorism with the Taliban. Work on counterterrorism with the Taliban. The Taliban are the world's deadliest terrorists, responsible for the killing of over 2,000 American soldiers. And there's so many examples in recent days of how, unfortunately, Team Biden is drawing these false distinctions between good terrorists and bad terrorists.
And they are also
Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS-K, despite their separate identities and past struggles, share a common ideology and commitment to global jihad.
And they're doing some things deliberately. And I want quickly to go to Alan Pincus once more. Ambassador Pincus, the Taliban know what they're doing. They're taking the Haqqani to Bagram Air Base, taking a picture there. Yeah. They have been attacking women protesting in Herat with guns. They have been parading suicide bombers. And this is what is being celebrated by the Hezbollah, that, you know, that they're parading people who are carrying these vest bombs. And by the way, they have also said, listen, Haqqani is part of us. The Taliban has said, and I quote, Haqqanis are not a group, they are an integral part of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. They are the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. So they've said, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, all of us are together. They've officially said it. They've said it, Ambassador Pincus.
Yeah, but you know, Arnab, we said that before, that Hezbollah is rejoicing because of what seems to them as some kind of a Taliban victory, which it probably is not. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be an Islamic caliphate from Afghanistan in the east to Morocco in the west, spanning that entire rainbow. Look, obviously they're happy about this, but that you know, again, I fail to see the connection between Afghanistan and Hezbollah. That they are happy, that they are rejoicing, that they think this emboldens or empowers them, fine. Don't forget that Hezbollah are Shiites, their benefactor is Iran. Iran is not happy with the Taliban. Iran was never happy with ISIS. In fact, Iran...
I'll just give one line response, I'm short of time, is, the link is this, when 9/11 happened, and we have the 25th anniversary coming up, America went in saying we don't want to give the Al-Qaeda a safe haven. 20 years later, if there's a terrorist attack, they know there's a safe haven. And Taliban is the safe haven. We can disagree about it. Maybe we'll debate it once more. And on the other side, I thank you all very much. And ladies and gentlemen, on the other side, the Lutyens media's absolute favorite, their number one source, Sachin Vaze, has now been found guilty of murder, extortion, and terrorism. One of the many questions which comes to my mind is, why has the media, that side of the media, blacked out the story today? On that and much more in a few minutes. Don't go away.